Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 3, Episode 38. The Pittsburgh Steelers come out with a victory on Monday Night Football, their first of the 2018 season, improving their record to 1-1-1 with a 30-27 final score. A very exciting game, and we'll get to it in a minute. But Austin, we've got a pretty exciting announcement, don't we?
Yes, I think I said last week on the podcast that we would have a giveaway to announce soon. I finally got the details on it, and it should be dropping. Right now, it's set to start in 4 days, but it's pending the review of TSE. But we are giving away a number 19 Juju Smith-Schuster jersey. We're going to be giving away on Gleam like we did our Funko Pop giveaway last week, and it's going to be given by TSEShop.com. It's the number one spot for Steelers, Pirates, and Penguins memorabilia. So go check them out. They were nice enough to provide us with the jersey for this giveaway. So definitely check them out.
That is absolutely lit AF. Very, very nice of them to do that. And TSE, absolutely the best place to find autographed Pittsburgh sports memorabilia, as we both know. So thank you very much for that announcement, Austin. So let's jump right back into the game. 30-27, kind of a tale of two halves, but the Steelers come away with the victory. I guess I know you were only able to see the second half, but were you able to catch up a little bit on this game and kind of see how it broke down, and just what were your first thoughts after seeing the game?
Well, I feel a little better about this team, but the defense is still bad. Then Vance McDonald might have quite literally ended Chris Conte's career, which is kind of sad. It was funny at first, and then it got serious when he actually got placed on injured reserve. Kind of sad, but it's been an 8-year-long career for Conte that's been full of injuries for him. This might have been his last go, especially with the 1 year of his contract being he was on a 2-year deal, with the first year being guaranteed, and now this was the first year. So next year he's no guarantee to stay with the Buccaneers. But the third thing is I saw some good things from Finney and Filer on the right side of the line, just further proving how Mike Munchak is good with everyone and anyone who you give to him. But don't mistake me for saying they were perfect, though. It wasn't a perfect game from them. It was just Munchak worked with what he was given, and that's what he's been known to do. What are your quick takeaways from this game?
Well, my initial thoughts were that, a win is a win, and it was tough. It wasn't perfect, but this was the best we've seen from the Steelers collectively so far. They have a long way to go, but again, a win is a win. The penalties, they have to be cleaned up. 13 more for 155 yards. That's not good. You're talking 30, what was it, 36, 37, I think, through 3 games. That's 8 or 9 more than the next closest team, which I think is the Bills. So that's crazy. And I get it, some of them are the ticky-tacky roughing the passer calls, but the ones on special teams, like the Darius Hayward-Bay one or the Nat Burray face mask, you can't do that. That's got to be preventable. You can't let that happen. And then, obviously, this isn't exactly a hot take per se, but the secondary minus Joe Hayden is just in shambles right now, especially with Mike Hilton possibly missing some time. So that's not very good. All right, let's look back at where we were right and where we were wrong regarding our X factors and bold predictions heading into this game. Austin, who are your X factors, and I guess what were your bold predictions, and how did it pan out in this one?
My X factors were Matt Filer and Cameron Hayward, and Filer actually did okay. Not amazing, but not terrible. Then Hayward did not so good, in my opinion. He only got 1 tackle, which was a tackle for a loss, but other than that, he was pretty quiet stat-wise. I felt like he wasn't getting that much pressure off either, so those were my X factors. As for my bold predictions, none of them were close. I predicted that Ben would get 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no turnovers, and that didn't happen. Then another one I predicted was Ryan Fitzpatrick would throw 2 interceptions, both to defensive backs. And that one, I guess I could say that one was close. He actually threw 3 interceptions, and 2 were to defensive backs, but 1 was to Bud Dupree. So anyway, and then my third one was that there would be no tackles for a loss on the right side, and that was wrong as well. So, but one more thing I want to talk about. Normally we don't bring this up in this section, but I just want to talk about how fire my key to the game was. My key for the defense anyway. I said that with all the yardage they give up, they need to force turnovers, and that is exactly what they needed to win. I think if they didn't get one of those turnovers, they would have lost. I think that's literally what changed the game, because they're, like I said, still a bad unit. They still give up a lot of chunk plays. They still give up a lot of yards. But if you're forcing those turnovers, erase some of the bad plays that they did. I mean, it doesn't exactly erase it, but it did. It changed the game having those turnovers. But how did your X factors and bold predictions pan out?
I guess we should probably consider talking about that whenever we look at I guess we could kind of call this where we were right, where we were wrong, instead of just the complicated saying of this is what we're looking back on. But to sum it up, my X factor on offense was James Washington, and on defense it was Bud Dupree. And while Washington had a pretty quiet day statistics-wise, he had 2 catches for 25 yards, but both of his grabs were important, and they were high-quality catches. The first, a 13-yard grab with 30 seconds to go in the first half, over the middle, contested, set the Steelers up with a chance to score a touchdown, which they later did. The second was a similar play on a 3rd and 4 from the Buccaneers' 46 in the third quarter. It was, like I said, it was a 3rd and 4, and another contested catch over the middle, so a couple of good plays from him. Bud Dupree had a surprisingly effective day. I didn't expect him to have a big day, and he wasn't perfect, but he was definitely trending in the right direction after this one. He had 3 tackles, a sack, a tackle and a half for a loss, actually, and obviously the most memorable play of them all, a pick 6, which was kind of gift wrapped to him, and it wasn't a long run, but hey, you know what? I'd rather he make the play and commend him for that or anything, as opposed to just ripping on him for what we had been ripping on him. So my bold predictions, though, I predicted 2 interceptions and 3 turnovers in total, when in reality the Steelers got 1 more of each on the day. Washington was far short of the 4 for 90 yards I predicted and 2 touchdowns, but did catch 2 passes for 25, so it really wasn't close on that one. And I guess this really isn't a bold prediction at all, but I was just frustrated with Bud Dupree. So I predicted that he wouldn't be offsides in this game, because he had been 3 times in 2 weeks, and he was not. So of the 13 penalties, that was not one of them. So I guess that's one positive to take from it. All right, into the injury report, just a couple to report. Mike Hilton was the big one. He left the game with what was later reported to be a hyperextended elbow. He was questionable to return but did not play again. The injury is not believed to be severe, but he may miss next week's game. I don't need to tell you, Austin, how important his loss could be, because outside of Joe Hayden, he's really the only other big playmaker on the back end, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he's the only other one besides Joe Hayden, like you said. It's going to be rough if next week that the Steelers have to start Cody Sensabaugh and Artie Burns to make up for Mike Hilton not being there. It's going to be rough.
And then you were reporting that Juju Smith-Schuster suffered an abdominal injury. What was that all about?
He never left the game, so I guess adrenaline kicked in and kept him from being hurt. Same with Marcus Gilbert last week. But he didn't practice this Wednesday because of it, and it was not a coach's decision. It was not listed as that. So that's going to be something to monitor going into next game's preview.
All right. We will keep an eye on it. All right, let's jump right into the game, Austin. Obviously, we usually start with the offensive side of the ball. 30 points in total, although only 23 came directly from the offense. So I guess gauge this unit from what you expected to kind of how they performed, and let's just kind of go through it. How did they do?
Sure. I'm going to start with the running backs, because I feel like I always leave them to last. And, I thought the run game as a whole suffered in this one until the end. Gerald McCoy was doing a good job of securing the middle, and Vinnie Curry was getting the edge pretty well from what I saw, along with JPP. But JPP was bigger on the pass rushing side. but it's not, the edge was not as good as how well the Bucs defended up the middle. It felt like Connor just kept running into a group of his pushback linemen every time he tried to run up the middle. It was very unsuccessful for most of the game. The best runs of the game came in the second half, where Connor busted out a long gain of 27 on his quest to end the game, and also got another big 9-yard gain that was crucial to ending the game. And because of those big runs, he finished with a decent average of 4.1 yards a carry, but like I said, that doesn't really tell the full story. Ridley also got 3 rushes in this one, and they were all solid. He had a long gain of 9 and averaged 6 yards a carry, which is not too bad for him. I also noticed some good pass protection from the running backs in this one. Definitely have no fear of letting James Conner block anymore. He seems ready and willing now. And this basically stacked up to how I expected it to go. A lot of people predicted a big rushing game for Conner in this one, and I didn't see it with the Bucs defensive line being the way it was. A lot of fantasy analysts said this is the guy to start, and I didn't see it. This is about what I expected from them. I mean, maybe a little bit less in the rushing regard, but still. Anyway, let's talk about part of the reason the running backs struggle, the offensive line. The line just isn't very good at run blocking. That probably isn't going to change. Funny enough, I thought that Connor had the most success running to the right when he did run, and that's the side that Finney and Filer were on. Steelers have had 3 negative running plays on the right side all year, and that's been with David DeCastro out 2 weeks, and now Marcus Gilbert out 1. While on the left side, they also have 3 negative rushes when Villanueva and Ramon Foster are the stars and haven't come out since the beginning of the year. So take that as you will. In terms of pass blocking for this one, I thought that they got the job done pretty well. The first 2 sacks came off the backup side on the right, and that's not terrible. You can't be perfect every game. And one of the 2 sacks was a coverage sack as well, so you can't really blame the line all too much. Then on the 3rd sack, Villanueva got worked, which led to Ben fumbling. But there was good hustle by B.J. Finney to go and recover and allow the Steelers to punt there instead of letting the Bucs take over on a shorter field position. But I will say the worst one out of the line of the night was Villanueva. He really struggled in this one, I felt, despite only allowing that 1 sack. But now let's talk about Roethlisberger. I felt like he had a great game even with that 1 interception. At first, when I saw that interception, I was mad. But after looking back, Ben made a great play by somehow escaping the pocket, and it did look like he had Juju, but Evans was just so fast. It made a great athletic play to make that interception. It's still an interception, but it wasn't as bad to me on the second run-through of watching it. Then he just carved up the Buccaneers defense. I wish he did more in the second half of the play. But he only got the ball 4 times in the second half, and 1 was on the final drive of the game. So I still think he did great in the first half, though. It felt like he spread the ball and wasn't overly focused on any one receiver. Juju was big for him in this one again. I really love Juju coming out of the slot. It causes so many mismatches for him and allows him to be Ben's favorite target, and this is why currently he leads the league in yards from the slot for a wide receiver. So it's really doing wonders for him to be getting these mismatches. But Antonio Brown got his love in this one, too. He was able to break off a nice 27-yard touchdown on a wide receiver screen that was basically all on him to just juke out the one guy. He's still not getting as many yards, but it's really because Ben has so many options he could throw to. And like I said, Juju in the slot creates so many mismatches that Juju tends to be the one that gets open easier. So Ben doesn't have to force it to AB, who tends to be in double coverage and tends to have the better cornerback on him still. Though Ben's deep ball is not completely there with AB, so his production should still go up soon from where it's at. It's still not at where it should be, so it will be fixed soon, I think. After AB, Ryan Switzer and James Washington both came up huge on this one. Ryan caught an ugly touchdown, but it was a touchdown nonetheless. And Washington continued to prove his skill set of being able to come down with the ball while being blanketed by a defender on his 2 catches for 25 yards. Now, finally, I want to talk about tight end. Vance McDonald was beyond disrespectful. Chris Conte has kids. Chris Conte has a wife. How could he lay such a mean stiff arm? It wasn't even just one, though. He punched into him and then thrusted his hand down on him again to finish the job. But seriously, though, I highly recommend you guys check out James Harrison's take on it. Harrison talked to Skip Bayless about that play, and it was really, really funny. Just Google it on YouTube. That was the best thing Vance did, but he also had 3 other catches, and they were pretty solid as well. He had a really good day, and it's coming off of a game where Jesse James just had a big game, so it's really been, I guess, I don't know whether to call it surprising or more just like a pleasant occurrence that the tight ends are having a really good games back to back. But what do you have to say about the offense coming out of this one? What did you think of how they did?
Well, as I have been doing, I'm kind of just going to go through kind of my notes that I took throughout the game when I rewatched it the second time. I had a lot of notes, so I'll try to sum it up pretty quickly here. But I had a question for you. Why did the Steelers like using Ryan Switzer in the backfield so much? What is the advantage to that?
I have no idea. Maybe they think that it's confusing. Maybe they know that they can have a really tight route coming out of the backfield. But like, I feel like James Conner has been pretty good on his route running as well coming out of the backfield. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't really see what their obsession with it is.
I wonder if there's something that he can do, like if he can throw the ball, that maybe they're like for the first few weeks they're trying to make it seem like he's just kind of a decoy back there, and then eventually they'll hit him with the trick play. I don't know. For whatever reason, they like using him there, and I'm not super sold on it. I really hammered this home in my notes a few times. The Buccaneers are a good team when it comes to stopping the run on defense, and they were committed to that in this game. They knew the Steelers were starting 2 reserve offensive linemen on the right side, so you watch a lot of the Steelers' runs to the left, and they were just getting overwhelmed just because they kept sending just masses of their defense over the left side. So the Steelers running into that was a mistake. They should have tried running to the right, like you mentioned, Austin, because although they were unproven for the most part, you had to figure that the Buccaneers defense was going to try to stop it on the left side. On the right side, though, it is intriguing to mention that Ramon Foster was pulling a few times in this game, and I think he's pretty good at pulling. He's not athletic like DeCastro or Pouncey, but he's good enough to do it from time to time. Elsewhere, I felt like the offense came out of the gate slow. Wouldn't you agree that the offense just like wasn't for the second straight week they didn't really get going for the first few weeks?
Yeah, I want to see more like points off of the first drive. Like the first drive was a 3 and out. Like maybe I need to start slower than that. I'm saying points on the first drive. Maybe they should get like a first down on the first drive at least. Like they didn't even move the ball. It's just 3 and out immediately.
Yeah, I'm not super sure what that's all about. The pass protection I think held up pretty well for most of the night. The backups did hold their own for the most part. They weren't great, but they did what they had to do. Vance McDonald was effective in all aspects of the game. This was the best overall game we've seen from him. If we remember Ladarius Green's breakout performance a couple years ago, this was probably McDonald's. And although he only had 4 catches on the day as opposed to Green's 6, he had a 100-yard game, and he was an effective blocker as well. And obviously, you need not say any more about the stiff arm than what you already said, Austin. Just a vicious play, and it's an early play of the year candidate, and that was just fantastic. The interception, you could talk a lot about that interception, about what should have been done. The protection was great. The receiver should have gotten more separation. Roethlisberger shouldn't have thrown the ball, but really that was just a great play by Justin Evans on the whole. So I'm not super frustrated with that play, as you said. What else? Moving on here. What's with all these poor snaps from Pouncey? This is the 3rd week in a row we've seen a couple of these poor snaps that have just... In this case, it ended up with Connor getting drilled in the backfield. Did you see that?
I didn't actually see that. I don't recall, so I must have missed that one.
I suppose that could have been on Roethlisberger because it was under center, so you really can't tell for certain if they don't show a replay if that's going to be on Roethlisberger or not. But that's just weird. It's something you want to keep an eye on because that's not something you'd expect from a quarterback center battery that's been together for as long as these guys have been. I mentioned the offense. I felt like they were just too conservative early. Oh, back to the stiff arm from McDonald on Chris Conte. What do you think was the more impressive stiff arm? You've got this stiff arm. I don't even mean the play. I mean this stiff arm. We can talk about plays, but I think this play will be more impressive. But which stiff arm itself was more impressive? McDonald's on Chris Conte or last year, Le'Veon Bell on Dre Kirkpatrick?
See, I actually think this one is more disrespectful because I felt like he literally took him, pushed him down, and then pushed him down again for good measure. I mean, last year's against Dre Kirkpatrick was good, and it really was. It felt nasty, but like it also didn't go for a touchdown either. So like I feel like there's more that came out of Vance's that makes it like better. Like he literally took him and shoved him out of bounds and went and took it for a touchdown. So I'm going to go with Vance's. What do you think?
And you also have to factor in that Bell pushed him down so hard he bounced right back up. I guess that like it optically looks kind of cool, but he also just got right up. Whereas Conte went like flying in front of him and was down and like out of the play completely. And it was just the touchdown. It's hard to not take that into account as well. I mean, they were both fantastic stiff arms, but I think it almost was nicer to see McDonald do it just because we haven't seen something like that from him, and it was completely unexpected. Like, Bell's a workhorse. You kind of expect him to do something like that. I don't think you expect that from McDonald. Maybe that shouldn't factor into that play itself, but that's just how I see it right now. And I think they're both great plays, but I had to give a slight edge to McDonald on this one. All right, where else? 3rd and 11 at the Bucs 25, early second quarter. Another great play by McDonald and Roethlisberger, showing some good chemistry there. Roethlisberger's deep ball, as you mentioned, still not quite there yet. He had a couple deep balls that connected in this one. The first one that he connected to Juju, that actually probably could have been tipped by Brent Grimes, but he didn't play it very well. So he got away with one. You mentioned Roethlisberger missing Brown on that deep ball. That's probably a touchdown. If not, he's inside the 10-yard line if he connects that one. That's an important one that Roethlisberger missed. And then the other one, can we not remember, or lest we forget about Isaiah Johnson's life nearly ending because Roethlisberger threw the ball out of the back of the end zone and he tried to go and get it, and then lo and behold, there's a wall back there, and he got absolutely crushed by it. Did you see that?
I did see that. It was the one targeted at Xavier Grimble, right? It was way out of bounds?
Yeah, it was almost like he punted it like out of the back of the end zone, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember that play. That was nasty. He got hurt on that play, the cornerback. I remember that. It
just sounded bad. I don't know what his condition was. We probably should have checked, but I'm hoping he's okay. Austin, you were talking about the runs too. The Steelers didn't run the ball a lot up the middle. A lot of their runs involved either pulling linemen or stuff off tackle, or I don't know. I feel like not a lot of their runs were directly up the middle, and I think that was a little too predictable too. They didn't help themselves either. Just the touchdown to Brown was just classic vintage Antonio Brown. And he still might not be where we expect him to be, but he's getting closer and closer to being back on track to what we're used to seeing from him, so that was good. I want to talk a little bit about the roughing the passer penalty. You remember the one where Roethlisberger was kind of hit in the head by Jason Pierre-Paul?
Where he kind of fell down afterwards?
And he kind of flopped, yeah.
Yeah, then I do.
People are complaining about that. I always thought that a blow to the head was a penalty regardless.
See, I'm complaining about it now too. Not even as a Steelers fan, because Ben literally came out and said, "Yeah, I flopped a bit." Like, I don't know. I'm not a fan of JPP getting the penalty there straight up because of that. Because that flopping is being introduced to football. Like that's. I don't like that. So I am against it. I'm for Jason Pierre-Paul not getting a penalty on that play.
I agree. I agree as far as the flopping goes. That's a context on roughing the passer that we'll get into a little bit later, but I guess my thoughts were if it's a blow to the head, it's a penalty. So I get that. I see why he did what he did, but when you have the like any hits on the quarterback being called penalties, flopping is going to happen. That's going to happen. So just wanted to get that in there. Roethlisberger was sacked 3 times in this game. You mentioned the third one was completely on Villanueva, and I agree with you. The first one was a coverage sack. No one was open, so the offensive line did their job on that one. And the second sack, 2 plays later, Matt Filer gave up a pretty bad pressure that forced Roethlisberger to step up into Vinny Curry. So overall, not terrible, but you want to see a little bit better going forward. The 2-minute drill at the end of the first half with 1:15 to go and 3 timeouts from their own 25, that might have been the best drive I've seen orchestrated by the Pittsburgh Steelers in a 2-minute drill ever, and at least in a long time. Every play was positive, with the exception of like a 3-yard pass to Connor, I think. Washington made a play, Smith-Schuster made a play, Brown made a play. There's one play that I specifically remember. It was a 10-yard out to Antonio Brown. They still had timeouts, and it took 3 seconds just right on the Tony toe tap play. And that's premier clock management. And the clock management itself was a lot better in this one. And I was very happy to see that. I just thought overall that drive was fantastic, and it was punctuated with the Switzer touchdown, which for whatever reason, I don't know what that camera angle was low in the end zone, but that can't happen again because I didn't see what happened, and I don't think anyone watching knew what happened in that instance. What else? That's just about it, I believe. I think we've both covered everything else. It was frustrating the Steelers couldn't establish anything on offense in the second half. What do you think was the reason for that?
I think it was because of really lack of chances. They only got 4 chances in the second half, and I think they had 7 in the first, I believe. I would have to go double check that to make sure, but they weren't also given good field position by the defense like they were in the first half. So I feel like a lot of the drives were started back farther when in the first half there's a bunch of turnovers that kind of flipped the field. Some of them weren't like really great field position, but like I feel like that might have jump-started them a little bit, got them going. That's my only guess. What do you think?
I think it's a combination of just not great adjustments in the second half, like going into the second half, and at least with the final drive where they're trying to ice the game, they're being a little more conservative, but I don't know. It also comes down to execution too, so I don't think there's one single reason for it. Last but not least, Roethlisberger 2 for 2 on quarterback sneaks this year, and just the last first down, second to last first down conversion. Roethlisberger extending the play to Juju. That's just a vintage Ben Roethlisberger play. And then it was nice to see James Conner, who had a tough day. Best plays of the game came when he needed to have them. Best runs of the day. So I was happy to see that. So on the other side, the defense had kind of a Jekyll and Hyde day. They continued to give up a ton of yards, but they came up with those big splash plays that we've been looking for all year, and they finally got it. So I guess at the end of the day, was their performance, it was good enough for a win, but was it good enough in your eyes?
Well, personally, I thought they did okay at the end of it. The turnovers is what really helped them out. Without them, we would be having a whole different conversation. I wouldn't be able to say that they were really better than last week because of how bad the secondary looks. But let's start with the good in the turnovers. The first was a good fumble forced by Artie Burns and recovered by Mike Hilton. It was definitely the best thing I saw from Artie all night. It was part of the big night by Hilton, but really it was just good play by Artie. I mean, there's nothing else I can really say. He just ripped that straight out of there and kept it in bounds. Then Hilton recovered. But on the second turnover, Bostic got right in Fitzpatrick's face and deflected the ball right to Mike Hilton. It was a good play for little Mike Hilton to high point the ball because there were Buccaneers receivers around trying to get it as well. So, but it was an even greater play from Bostic by blocking the pass. But the third interception wasn't all too great. I loved Edmonds' return as he flashed his athletic abilities, but the pick happened because of miscommunication between Mike Evans and Fitz that caused Fitz to overthrow the ball right into Edmonds' hands. But finally, the last turnover was a pick six by Bud Spree, and I have to give major props to Dan McCullers. McCullers is the one that forced it by bulldozing down the middle and hitting Fitzmagic's hands before he was completely done with his throw. then Bud Dupree just did his magic. He used his athleticism, and he laid a minor stiff arm on a guy and got into the end zone. It was a really solid play all in all. But now after the turnovers, there were a few bright spots I wanted to highlight. Firstly, last week I talked about how Chickalo was probably a better pass rusher than Dupree, and I still hold that. Even though Dupree had a good game, I'm not going to change my opinion. And Chickalo had the best sack of his career in this one, absolutely refusing to be denied by a lineman and the running back. I believe it was Peyton Barber, not Chickwiz Rogers, and got to fit through two guys. And I was so hyped after that play from him. It was a really good sack. But apart from him, two Steelers had pretty big days, and that would be John Bostic and Joe Hayden. Bostic was a monster in this one, getting 6 solo tackles, one being for loss, a sack, and 2 passes defense, one leading directly to an interception. He had a huge day, and then Hayden had some pretty big plays as well. He tried the ball loose from receiver 3 times and only allowed 3 receptions on 8 targets. He did well. Then finally, Bud Dupree got a sack in this one, but it was a coverage sack and not super impressive, but I just wanted to mention that he did actually get a sack. But now let's get to the bad. The defensive backs are a mess. Artie Burns and Cody Sensabaugh both got worked hard in this game. Burns was targeted 7 times, allowed 5 receptions, and Sensabaugh got targeted 8 times, allowed 6 receptions. Both allowed a touchdown, and both allowed over 85 yards receiving against them. They both looked terrible out there in their own regard. Burns got burned exactly like we saw against the Chiefs, and then Sensabaugh just looked clueless out there. Like, he would have good coverage, but still somehow allow the reception because he didn't turn for the ball. There's a specific play I remember with him where he's literally in perfect position to just break up the ball. Like, his back is just to it. He has the receiver, I think it was actually a tight end, the tight end blanketed, and it just somehow gets sneaked in past him because he's just not looking. Like, I was just like, how does this happen? Like, how did you just not see the tight end turn around and just turn for the ball? All you had to do was kind of flail your arms a little bit. But anyway, they just didn't look good out there, the two of them. Neither of them are going to be fun to watch next week. I'm not going to be looking forward to it. They both have to start, like I said, because I'm really hoping Mike Hilton's going to be okay for this one. He was a non-participant on Wednesday already, but I'm still holding hope because it's not going to be pretty. But then the safeties looked bad. Sean Davis was penalized twice, and he looked clueless out there as well. To his benefit, the roughing the passer penalty wasn't really like super his fault. It was more of the new like rules and stuff, and just kind of, I don't know. I didn't feel too bad about it when it happened, seeing it, but the extra little bit with him pushing Mike Evans out of bounds was stupid. There's no reason for that. It was clearly over the sideline. It was just stupid and asking for a penalty. Terrell Edmonds didn't really look much better. He was slow to get around. He doesn't seem to really want to get involved often. I don't see him hanging around. He has great athletic abilities and speed, and he doesn't really get to plays. He's just not a difference maker, in my opinion. He doesn't want to get involved. And I mean, it's not that he doesn't want to get involved, he just doesn't get involved. I mean, sure, he got that interception, but it was more of a right place, right time kind of thing. He only had 1 tackle other than that, but then again, the stars of the defense had a pretty quiet day too, so I hate to see that. T.J. Watt wasn't very disruptive. He had 4 tackles, but I think he could do better. Then really, Cameron Hayward didn't do much at all. I want more out of him than 1 tackle, but that really wraps up the defense for me. What say you of the defense coming out of this game?
Well, you said it. Joe Hayden was the Steelers' best defensive player in the secondary, and you really hope he stays healthy throughout the year. And you saw it on the first 3rd down of the game. He comes out there and lays a big hit, jars the ball loose, and it's clean. He was fantastic. I guess maybe by comparison, he was fantastic. He was good in this game, and that's you just want some stability in there, and he's got it. The field wasn't in great shape, and we saw that throughout the game, but Bud Dupree slipped on one of the Buccaneers' explosive plays for O.J. Howard. The Monday Night Football crew has caught on, which I didn't think they did great, but I think people are just ripping the Monday Night Football broadcast crew to shreds, but They were talking about the Steelers' traditional 3-4 style linebackers that they continued deploying 4 of them at a time. They love to have that base defense out there, and they're just getting burned by athletic guys, namely tight ends. And I forget how many times I counted it, but there were like 4 or 5 different times the Steelers linebackers, whether it be T.J. Watt or John Bostic or Bud Dupree, any of them, were lined up on either Cameron Brate or O.J. Howard, and they ate them up, and it's just they're athletes. They're good at what they do. The problem is the game's speeding up too much for them, and linebackers, traditional 3-4 linebackers, aren't athletic enough to carry these tight ends who are basically just big wide receivers now. That's basically what they are. And you just can't have linebackers covering receivers, so why would you have linebackers covering tight ends who are basically just big receivers? It's a problem, and I don't understand why the Steelers continue to deploy their defense the way they have been. The 2 biggest problems with the defense that we've seen right now are on the other side. You're getting guys like Artie Burns or Cody Sensabaugh constantly burned, or you're seeing, and also in combination, safeties Sean Davis or Terrell Edmonds slow to get there for help, or you're seeing the linebackers getting burned over and over again over the middle. And one of those things you can do something about. You can do something about the inside linebackers getting them more help with DBs. Maybe it wouldn't help, but you could at least try something different. I don't know what else you could do about the cornerback position opposite Joe Hayden, but that's a discussion for another time. Outside of the poor positions they were put in, I feel like John Bostic and most of the linebackers had a pretty good day. Bostic's really only blemish was a personal foul on the quarterback when he hit Fitzpatrick, who was sliding. He was quick to the ball that when it was in front of him, and I felt like they had a pretty good job. Even Bostic had a pass breakup on Howard, which I was kind of surprised to see. One thing I wanted to mention with Keith Butler, who we tore to shreds last week, I think he does a good job scheming and adjusting as far as blitzes go and trying to get pressure on quarterbacks. He comes from the Dick LeBeau tree, so he knows how to dial up those exotic blitzes we've been used to seeing for the past almost 20 years now. Originally in the first quarter, we saw a lot of vanilla 4-man pass rushes where we would see just 4 guys, 3 of the defensive linemen, or 2 defensive linemen and both the outside linebackers just coming on a 4-man pass rush, and it wasn't getting there. Then we started to see Butler dial up stunts and guys coming in from other areas, defensive backs. We'd see still 4 or 5 blitzers. We rarely saw more than 5 blitzers, and it worked a lot better. Fitzpatrick was under a lot more pressure after that, so I wanted to make note of that because it is something that Keith Butler has done well this year, especially in this game anyways. And I wanted to make sure I made note of that. For instance, the Chicolo sack was a 5-man pass rush stunt with Hayward and Tuitt, Dupree, Vince Williams, and Anthony Chicolo. Dupree actually got a pretty solid pass rush on that play as well. He was stunning with Tuitt, who Tuitt was lined up outside, and Dupree rushed from inside, and they switched spots, and I don't think Dupree necessarily would have gotten there, but he got a free rush there, and obviously, as you mentioned, Chicolo just had a fantastic play. That sack was critical, by the way. That took the Buccaneers out of field goal range, and obviously, when you win by a field goal, that means that could have been the difference in that game, so I wanted to mention that. So, all right, analyzing the first of the 4 turnovers, the forced fumble by Artie Burns and the Mike Hilton recovery. Look, for the second straight week, that fumble should have never happened. Mike Hilton should make that tackle in the open field. That has to be made. And Burns made one of the few good plays of the day, but it was fantastic technique. Wrap up and helmet on the ball there. That was fantastic. And then Mike Hilton was in the right place at the right time. That was honestly the story for all the turnovers, too. The second one, which was, Bostic deflected the ball with his helmet. That was kind of interesting. And then Hilton was right there. Good concentration, came down with the ball in the right place there. Edmonds, again, as you talked about, right place, right time. And then Honestly, so is Bud Dupree. You talked about Big Dan McCullers with the pass rush there. Hit Fitzpatrick's arm as he threw it. He was going for an open Cam Brate, but underthrew it, and Dupree was there and took it in for the touchdown. What else? Just more struggles for the secondary. Sean Davis with that dumb penalty pushing Mike Evans out. Watch the first touchdown to Cameron Brate and watch Sean Davis. He looks lost out there. I really don't know what he's doing. He's like turned around and he's like, what is going on there? I don't know what he's doing. He talked about the play with Sensabaugh being plastered on Chris Godwin and he still came away with it. I'm trying to catch up on my notes here. The 3rd and goal, Joe Hayden pass breakup was a good play by Hayden, but Chris Godwin had a rough night. He needs to catch that pass. The first drive of the second half, we saw some Cody Sensabaugh, and he got worked, just like Artie Burns had been worked all game. Later on, the defense fell asleep. Another Chris Godwin play. I don't know. I'm sure you saw that. I don't know how that was ruled, that he was down. I thought for sure they were going to keep with the ruling on the field. Consider the defense incredibly lucky. If that happened, I was so mad, as I'm sure you saw on Twitter. I was very upset.
Oh yeah, I saw that play live, and I was confused. I felt like no one touched him either, and I was like, they're just gonna let him get up and walk, and then he just got up and walked. He got there, and then apparently the refs thought that Mike Hilton did enough contact to get him down in the first place that that was enough. But I mean, I didn't see it. I would have been mad if that didn't get reversed too. I mean, I'm still sort of mad. I think they just made the wrong call in the Steelers' favor.
All right. Elsewhere, checking more of my notes. Bostic had a good sack, attributed more to scheming again. The play where he broke up the pass that ended up being intercepted by Mike Hilton. I also wanted to make note that's a 5-man pass rush on a 5-man offensive line right there, and Bostic was free running at the quarterback. Just another example of the good scheme that they had there, and it worked. They basically ran stunning pretty much throughout the entire rest of the game, with the exception of the last drive. I was really frustrated. The Steelers had another 12 men on the field penalty on the defense. I don't understand. That's another one of those preventable penalties. I don't get how that happens. The last touchdown to Godwin that the Buccaneers score, Cody Sensabaugh plays that terribly. He plays that absolutely horribly. He's playing the man, and if you're going to play the man, don't grab him and just hold him like that. Push him out of bounds if you're going to do that, or just try to play the ball. I don't know what he was doing there, but he wasn't doing anything right there. TJ Watt had a couple bad angles in this one. He was in unfavorable matchups. I felt like his speed was kind of negated with the field the way it was. I'm sorry. When I said the TD to Godwin, that wasn't the last touchdown. The TD to Evans was the last one. That might have been the ugliest play I've seen from Artie Burns ever. How do you bite on that kind of a play in that situation? The dude's practically wide, but frankly, him and the safety, I forget who it was. That was just a terrible play. How is Mike Evans that wide open in the end zone? That cannot happen. The Steelers were lucky the Buccaneers didn't go down and score on their final drive. Cody Sensabaugh dropped a key interception that he probably should have caught. It's a tough play, but those are important ones to have. Anthony Chickillo dropped one that was a little tougher. I also feel like the Steelers were kind of lucky. Ryan Fitzpatrick missed some throws on the last drive, and there were plays to be made, and he left them on the field on that drive. So I guess all in all, it probably sounded really negative, but I still think the Steelers' defense did a lot of things better than they did last week, but at the same time, it was hard to be much worse than they were last week, and 27 points against is still not great. A lot to improve from, but again, it was good enough to win. All right, on to special teams, Austin. Chris Boswell had another rough game. How's he doing, and how's the rest of the special teams unit doing?
Yeah, Boswell missed another PAT and another field goal. It's getting scary out here, folks. I think the Steelers need to start thinking about bringing a guy in next week with the thought process of, all right, if Boswell misses another PAT, let's bring in this guy, and this guy for a tryout like we did for Barry, which is to give him more incentive to fix what's going on, like they did with Barry. Speaking of the punter, he had another inconsistent game, starting with a bad punt, but getting two inside the 2-yard line with one getting called back on a phantom call on DHB. I don't know if you saw that. It was an illegal shift. Because of Steelers Depot tweeting it, that never happened. I don't know what that call was. That was a complete just miscall by the refs. It didn't happen. I looked back because of Steelers Depot saying he didn't see it on the all-22, and it didn't. It was just a bad call. That should have been down inside the 2. That's kind of annoying, but other than that, I was pretty happy with the coverage team, and Switzer's punt return of 16 yards was great. He literally tracked the ball and caught it over his shoulder and reverse field. It was really a great return for only 16 yards. It's just amazing. Amazing tracking skills on a punt. What do you have to say about special teams?
I think you covered it, really. It's just the penalties are maddening on special teams. I think there were 5 on the night from special teams. I could be wrong. There was one on the opening kickoff, which is insanity. There was another one on a PAT. I think it was someone lined up incorrectly. For the second straight week, that would be the case if that happened. That's ridiculous. Nat Burray had a face mask penalty. That's got to stop, man. You can't shoot yourself in the foot on special teams. Special teams is all about position battles on the field, and field position battles. That's what I'm trying to say. And penalties will absolutely wreck your special teams game plan. That's got to be remedied ASAP. Otherwise, Danny Smith could be on the hot seat relatively soon. Last but not least, I watched all of Chris Boswell's kicks, and there were a couple snaps that were kind of high, but not super high to the point where Jordan Berry would have any trouble fielding them. I know it wasn't a great field either, but I don't get what's going on with Chris Boswell. I really don't. I don't know if he needs to see a sports psychologist, but something's got to happen fast because he's more than likely not getting cut this year with, the guaranteed money for the Steelers player and a contract being in the first year. They've got him, so we know he can do it. Just got to get it together, man. Have faith. All right, let's move on to our awards section for this week. We'll start with the Stronger Than Steel Big Stop of the Week award, and this week it is going to be Bud Dupree with the pick 6. A lot of splash plays for the defense in this one, but a pick 6, that's always a big one to have. I don't remember. I'm just thinking about this off the top of my head. When was the Steelers' last pick 6?
It was William Gay against the Bengals in 2015. 15? I think 2016, but it could be 2015, and I could be confusing. I know it was a William Gay pick 6 against the Bengals.
It was 2015. That was the road game in Paul Brown Stadium when Andy Dalton broke his thumb on Stephon Tuitt.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that was the last pick 6 the Steelers had.
William Gay should have had another, as you remember, in Buffalo when we were there, but Artie Burns had a holding penalty that can never be forgiven.
Yeah, that's a shame.
So, who is the Stronger Than Steel player of the week?
For accumulating 6 tackles, all of them being solo and 1 for a loss, a sack, and 2 passes defensed, John Bostic is the Stronger Than Steel player of the week. It was between him, Joe Hayden, and Ben Roethlisberger, but I felt like John Bostic had the most complete game. Obviously, Roethlisberger had the interception, and then Hayden actually did give up a touchdown. So I thought Bostic was the best choice here.
All right, play of the game. Was there really any doubt? It has to be Vance McDonald's Hulk-like stiff arm of Chris Conti and the 75-yard touchdown that brought the Steelers back into the game. Really kind of turned the season around, possibly, depending on how the rest of the season goes. But that could be a season-altering moment. And I wouldn't have expected it from Vance McDonald, but I'm sure am happy that it did happen, and I'm happy for him, and I'm glad we finally got to see kind of the Vance McDonald we were all kind of expecting to see after that playoff game against the Jaguars. Do you have anything else you want to add to it?
No, not much.
All right. The only other thing I wanted to say is I think the last pass to Juju Smith-Schuster should be considered an honorable mention just because of how clutch of a play that was by both guys. All right, positional grades. Let's start with the quarterbacks. How do you think Ben Roethlisberger performed in this one on a grade?
I'm going to give him A. There's not much bad I could say about Roethlisberger. He had a solid game and continues to improve. What do you give him?
Agreed. He had just a handful of bad plays. The interception, which really I think was just a great individual defensive play, and the missed deep ball to AB. But other than that, he was perfect. Looks like the rust is gone. Running backs, how did they do? They had a tough day on the ground, but they did some other things well too.
I'm going to go with a B+. If not flash drive, this would have been a B, but Connor carried the team to victory, and his pass blocking and catching were solid too, as well as Stephen Ridley having three pretty solid runs. So B+ for them. What do you give them?
I gave them an A-. Look, I knew going in this was going to be a tough team to run the ball against. They're a prideful team, and they try to stop the run. They have good linebackers and defensive linemen. They didn't want to play away from their strength. They figured, you know what, we'll take our chances with Big Ben. They fought hard and bottled up James Conner for most of the game, but he ran hard and effectively at the end of the game when the runs mattered the most, and he iced the game for the most part. He was a solid receiver again, and he's proving that he can be a three-down back in this league. At the wide receiver position, Austin, there was a lot of contributors in this one.
Oh, yes. I think that for all the contributors, they earned an A. I felt like they all thrived, and I can't really complain about much here, similar to quarterback. It just was not an A+ performance yet. I don't know what's going to get an A+ performance quite yet, but this wasn't it. I know that. What do you give them?
I'll give them an A-. Everyone that played on offense contributed to a great performance here. AB wasn't his amazing self yet, but he had some great plays, and he was still present on the offense. Juju is still the Steelers' best player this year, and James Washington had a couple of great contested catches, and Ryan Switzer had a touchdown. But DHB's incredibly stupid special teams penalty brings this grade down on its own. That could have been an enormously costly penalty, so an A- is what I'm giving the wide receivers. Tight ends had another huge week this time, although this time it was a collective unit as far as the ground, but someone else leading the show this time.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to give them an A+. Last week they were close to an A+, and this week was enough to get it. Vance McDonald stiff-armed his way to an A+ for the tight ends. That was essentially it. There was no penalties on the tight ends this one. At least I can remember. I don't think there was. And that was just enough. His performance was enough to get an A+. Also, Jesse James got a catch in this one for 7 yards. So A+ for the tight ends. What do you give them?
I'm in complete agreement. A fantastic performance by all three guys. And although McDonald was the primary pass target, he did obviously very well on all of his catches. So A+ for them. Offensive line with 2 reserve players in. Did they meet your expectations?
I'm going to give them B-. I felt like for the 2 reserve players in, it wasn't too bad at all. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. So I'm going to give them a B-. What do you give them?
I agree. Look, they struggled to get a push on the ground for most of the game, and they still gave up 3 sacks. You don't want to do that every week. But because there are 2 backups in there, I understand it. But at the same time, I still think they can play better than what we saw. So B- is what I'm giving them. On the other side of the ball, the defensive line, not as much of a push as you'd probably want to see. I don't know. They left me wanting more.
Yeah, they really didn't get enough plays for me. Dan McCullers forced the pick 6, and again, this week is a big reason why I give them a C. I felt like Tuitt and Hayward just weren't there. Alu actually had more stats than Hayward did, so I give them a C, and it's largely based on Dan McCullers forcing that pick 6. He's a big reason why I picked that grade. Otherwise, it would have been lower, probably D+. What do you give them?
They made a few plays for the most part on the day. I mean, they just, like you said, they weren't as noticeable. But I felt like they did a pretty solid job on the ground game. The Buccaneers didn't really run the ball a whole lot, I guess. But I guess just on the whole, I feel like you're missing those splash plays, those sacks from Tuitt and Hayward that we've been expecting for a while. So I want to see more from those guys. But ultimately, not a terrible day, but you want some more stand-out plays, I suppose. The linebacker position, I feel like, was a lot more improved from last week, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I give them a B+ for this performance. It was hard for me to give them anything worse than this with Dupree's, Chicolo's, and Bostic's performances. Definitely thought these guys were solid in this one. They put up pretty big stats and stuff. They've got some nice sacks. They got a pick six. It's hard for me to give them less than a B+. What did you give them?
I went with a B, and like you said, it's hard to bash on these guys a ton. Bostic and Williams played well, and Dupree did some things well. T.J. Watt struggled a bit, but the overall theme is that these guys are getting hung out to dry constantly by the coaching staff's defensive scheme. Stubbornness or whatever it may be, it's just not working, and I don't understand why they keep trying it. Either get more athletic guys in there or give them a little more help. They aren't being put in a position to succeed right now, and it shows. So I probably shouldn't have that affecting them, but for now, at least this week, I'm going to have it bring down their grade a little bit to a B. Oh, boy, defensive backs had another rough day at the office, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. I give them a D for this performance. Joey Hayden and the 3 turnovers they got saved them from failing, but this is a bad unit that needs help, and they don't have it on the team. If they want to improve their defense, they're gonna have if they want to improve their defensive backs, they're gonna have to go off the team. They're gonna have to try and either trade for someone or, I don't know, find a diamond in the rough. Maybe Eric Reed can play corner. I don't even know if there's any other cornerbacks in the market. These corners are bad. That's it. What do you give them?
Yeah, outside of Joe Hayden, everyone else was bad. Even Mike Hilton, who had an interception and a fumble recovery, did not play a very great game. He was inconsistent at best. The safety position is a work in progress, and the cornerback position opposite Joe Hayden is just a disaster. Where is Cam Sutton, I ask you? What happened to him? Like, is he just not playing? Do they not trust him out there? I don't get it. Why is he not playing over guys like Sensabaugh and Burns?
I guess they think he's worse. I don't know. He was out there for a few snaps, but he didn't play for a good amount at all.
Which is weird because he's the guy that came in the Brown. Maybe he never showed up on the injury report, but maybe there was something else there. I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just weird. All right, specialists. Kind of an up and down game depending on how you want to look at it. So maybe kind of a hard group to grade here, but what'd you give him?
I gave him a C+. I still don't feel good about the kickers, but the coverage teams and Switzer both did solid. So C+. What do you give them?
I gave them a B-. Look, the return game was solid in this one, and besides one of the returns by Deshaun Jackson, which was called back by a penalty, the coverage units did a good job. I thought I was actually not that overly mad at Barry and his performance. I'm worried about Chris Boswell, though. He's got to get it together. So B-. And then last grade is coaching. You could kind of go a lot of places with this grade, but where did you go?
I'm going to go to C-. I blame a lot of the penalties on coaching like I did last week. Through 3 weeks, this is the second most penalized team in history. It's absolutely putrid, but I felt like Butler did improve his play calling a little bit in this one. Like you said, the blitzes are still pretty good from him. And I thought Fichtner had a lot of good play calls. Really it. C- for them. What do you give them?
The game plan on offense going in was garbage. The opening scripted plays were not good. There were way too many penalties again. Linebackers being matched up against super athletic tight ends is ridiculous. It's got to stop. And I'm going to ding the coaches' grade for it every week that they continue to do it. So C+ for the coaches. I felt like they adjusted relatively well in this game, though. So that's helping them for sure. Austin, give me both of your winners for the Pittsburgh Steelers, one on offense, one on defense from this game.
For offense, it's Vance McDonald. It's pretty easy. He put up 100 yards and had that nasty stiff arm. It was very good for a second game back from injury and an improvement over last week where he was penalized twice. For defense, it's Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden proved that he is one of the only reliable Steelers defensive backs they have, and he definitely won in this one. So who are your two winners in this game?
Mine are James Conner, the running back. Look, he had a tough week on the ground for, about 80% of the game, but he rebounded nicely and had 3 big runs at the end of the game. And I saw 2 hands on that football, and that was nice to see. He caught the ball well, and he was a good pass protector too. So I was happy to see that. And on defense, it was John Bostic. Just outside of the big penalty he had, he balled out. A sack, several huge tackles. He was quick to the ball, even a pass breakup. He's definitely not Ryan Shazier, but he's currently a solid option as a downhill linebacker. He's about what we thought he'd be, and I was happy to see that in this one. Who were your losers on offense and defense?
On defense, it was Artie Burns. Burns got benched, and when he came in, was still terrible. At this point, I really hope the Steelers don't pick up his 5th-year option because he can't keep up with receivers. He really just lives up to his name and just gets burnt. For offense, it's Villanueva. I felt like he had a pretty hard time again this week, similar to Week 1, and he was really the only offensive loser I could think of. So for me, I thought Villanueva had to be the offensive loser. Who are your losers on offense and defense?
My offensive loser, it's going to be kind of a nitpicky one. In fact, it's a really nitpicky one. That should tell you how well the offense played, and it's Jesse James. He had only 1 catch for 7 yards on a single target. So, he caught the ball that was thrown to him, and he did a pretty good job as a blocker. Maybe if you're a fantasy owner of his, like my roommate was talking to me about possibly picking him up, and I told him not to. I bet he's pretty happy, and people who started him this past week probably were not happy that Jesse James had just 1 catch. So for that reason alone, and for nothing else because of what happened on the field, because there's not really anyone else I could pick, Jesse James is my very, very, very undeserving loser on offense. The other loser on defense, though, is going to be the guy that split snaps with your loser, Austin, Artie Burns, and it's Cody Sensabaugh. He wasn't much of any better than Artie Burns was. Burns might be more frustrating because he's talented and you can see that, but he's still getting burned. But Sensabaugh is just not good. When you put him on Mike Evans, he's going to get slaughtered, and he absolutely was. And he played, as I said before, that touchdown to Chris Godwin terribly. That's just, I never thought he was going to make the roster in the first place this year, and I understand why he made it, but I think it's showing why having a player like him on the team is not necessarily a good thing. So that wraps it up for our winners and losers, and I guess really for this game. The Steelers moved to 1-1-1. What are your concluding thoughts on this game?
Something I just wanted to talk about because I thought about it. James Conner, the reporters kept going on about how he wants to be known as a football player and not just for cancer. The reporters are just so bad on that. Like, they would literally say, yeah, he wants to be known as a football player and not for cancer. And then they'd be like, yeah, but, like, he survived cancer. Like, and then they would go talk about Le'Veon Bell. And there's been a bunch of memes on it on Twitter and stuff. Like, the announcers I don't think they see how, like, ironic they're being or hypocritical, one of the two, whichever you want to call it. Like, it would literally go on and on, like, yeah, no, don't talk about his cancer, but, like, he rushes now. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler, and he used to have cancer. Like they don't know how to not say it. It's like, it's a different aspect. It's like Ryan Fitzpatrick. You can't get through a game without knowing that Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. Like, it's coming up. It's coming up one time in the game that Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. So, or Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan's a lacrosse player. Like, it's just, these announcers are so, I don't know, they're just stupid. I don't like that. Like, they don't even realize, like, what they're doing. With Connor, it's more serious. It's like, he survived a lethal disease, and he doesn't want to be known for that. He wants to be known for how he performs in the NFL, but I don't know. I had that thought on my head, and I wanted to share that.
Yeah, Monday Night Football, like ESPN in general, is just not very good anymore, in my opinion. They've changed a lot, and I'm not digging the direction that company's gone the last few years. And then, I guess furthermore, it's just they struggled to replace Mike Tirico and John Gruden. They had, Jason Witten's new at it, so I'm not going to bash him a ton, but I think he can be better than what we've seen so far. And then, who was the other play-by-play guy last year who had that huge voice cracking problem in the playoff game?
I can't remember.
Sean McDonough, right?
Who?
Was that his name, Sean McDonough?
I have no idea. I don't recognize that name at all.
Yeah, Sean McDonough. He was the play-by-play guy on Monday Night Football. And he's doing college football now. Okay. I don't even think he was that good. I thought Mike Tirico was pretty good, but obviously he's at NBC now. Anyways, let's go back to some Steelers news. What's going on around the locker room right now?
For his 30 completions on 38 throws for 353 yards and 3 touchdowns, Ben Roethlisberger actually won AFC Offensive Player of the Week this week. Other than that, there's some good news for some players that were injured last week. On Wednesday, Morgan Burnett, David DeCastro, and Marcus Gilbert all practiced in full. They all missed this last game, obviously, with Filer, Terrell Edmonds, and DJ Finney starting. So this is good news for getting 3 starters back. And then, obviously, pretty big news is the only drama we have is that Big Ben threw a tantrum on the sideline this week after having a talk with Antonio Brown about it last week. But, other than that, we're pretty drama-free for the first, week this year. That's
good stuff. Good stuff. And the Lev Bell thing is kind of quieted down for a bit, so that's kind of cool. Besides the whole, trade offer thing, but I don't think he's getting traded. We can talk more about that later. Let's jump to the NFL and Week 3 slate of games. Let's talk about some highlighted games, I guess, some of the bigger surprise upsets and games of the week. The first one that it seemed like no one was talking about was the Saints and Falcons. The Saints won, I believe it was 43-37 in overtime. Was that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that was a pretty good game. And almost a third tie in a row, which I was really hoping for, but sadly did not happen as the Saints pull out the W. Great play all around by the offenses there in that one.
Yep, as I said in the preview, Michael Thomas is just amazing. Drew Brees is old and still amazing, and just the whole team. If their defense can get it together, they're a pretty dangerous team, especially with Mark Ingram coming back after next week. It's gonna be rough for people versus the Saints.
Jimmy Garoppolo, 49ers quarterback, is out for the season. I don't know if the 49ers are going to tank or anything ridiculous like that, but it could be a long season for them. Did you see the play was another non-contact ACL injury?
Oh, yeah. That's I saw it, and I was like, yeah, he's done. Honestly, the non-contact stuff is always usually a season-ending stuff. But, I guess it's the 49ers needed more time to build anyway. They weren't a competitor in my eyes yet. So, this isn't the worst thing in the world. I don't think they were competing for anything, especially, maybe in their division. But they were definitely not winning their division. There's no way they're beating out the Rams. It's just, I think that this isn't the worst thing ever. They needed to rebuild anyway. And, they didn't have they still have Breida, but they didn't have Jarvis McKinnon. So it's not the worst in the world.
The Dolphins are 3-0. Who saw that coming?
Absolutely no one, I hope. It was their team on paper coming into this season was garbage. And now, I still think that they're going to be smacked back into reality this week when they play the Patriots, but I don't know what to say. I didn't think they would be 3-0. I thought maybe they'd be 2-1 if they were lucky, but yeah, Surprised, I guess.
They just won't go away. And someone who we thought was who went away and they were done for the year, the biggest upset of the week, the 0-2 Buffalo Bills, who had been crushed in 2 straight games, go into Minnesota of all places and shut down the juggernaut Minnesota Vikings, giving up only 1 touchdown in the last 5 minutes of the game. Josh Allen looking like a superstar in his first game. The Bills come away with a huge 27-6 victory. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Austin. Never forget.
No. I hate them, though. I was so mad I didn't pick them this week. As soon as I saw it happening, I was like, no, this could have been the week. This could have been the final time. I said, yes, the Bills are winning 1 game, and this is the one time I didn't pick them to actually win. I just picked them to stay within the spread, and of course they just go on and win it instead.
Classic. We didn't see a lot of classic play from Carson Wentz, but it was his first start since tearing his ACL last year. Did you get a chance to see it at all? It wasn't a very impressive game, but it was important for the Eagles.
No, this was one of the games I didn't watch at all. I don't have a comment for this one. I didn't see a single play from it.
All right, I'm going to skip the Packers-Redskins because that there are storylines to talk about, but we'll get into that because the big storyline is more to do with roughing the passer, and we'll get to that in a minute. What else? Titans and Jaguars playing to a surprising 9-6 win for the Titans, and I'm telling you, it was the Blaine Gabbert injury that allowed the Titans to win. Marcus Mariota and the Titans know how to beat the Jaguars. I mentioned it on the podcast. They'll play them tough, and I think that Mariota actually coming in off the bench for Gabbert is the reason they won the game. That's just my opinion.
That's an interesting theory you got there, but yeah, I mean, I saw the Titans have the Jaguars number, as you said. It's really weird because the Jaguars are a much better team, but it is what it is, I guess.
Sometimes there are just matchup problems, and the Titans seem to have that for the Jaguars right now. Elsewhere, the Battle of LA won by the Rams over the Chargers. The Giants get their first win over the Texans. The Bengals fall to the Panthers, meaning the Steelers have a chance to go into first place in the AFC North next week. The Cardinals miss out on a chance to win their first game. Josh Rosen inserted in the last drive of the game. There's no reason that would work out well, and now Rosen's going to be starting for the Cardinals. What did you think about that game and the fact that they're now starting Rosen over Bradford?
Well, I want to say that move to start a guy in the last drive of the game was stupid. I don't understand that. If you're going to bench Bradford, bench him at the half, bench him at some reasonably early time where you could let the guy warm up and get in there and maybe get a few throws, not immediately say, okay, so you're being thrown in there, we're down with one last time to score right now. So you got to drive down the field and get us a touchdown or just get us a field goal so we could tie them and send this to overtime. And yeah, good luck, buddy. Get in there. You're good. You just I don't agree with that. I don't agree. The reasoning was apparently yeah, we wanted a spark. I don't agree with that move whatsoever. I thought that was a terrible move, and it's probably why the Cardinals are doing so bad if you're making moves like that. But yeah, that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, you're just setting up your team to fail when you do something like that, and it proved to be true again. Another very shocking result on Sunday Night Football, at least to a certain degree. My roommate, Will Lester, who's been on the show, a Lions fan, him and I had been talking about this game a good amount. He seemed pretty demoralized just because of the way the Lions had started, and I told him I believed that the Lions were going to play this one tough, but I didn't think they were going to win or be within a touchdown, and neither did you, Austin. But the Lions come out with a surprisingly effective ground game. They control the clock, keep Tom Brady on the sidelines, and when Brady had the ball, he wasn't particularly effective against his old defensive coordinator and the defense he fielded. The Lions just controlled the clock, the ground, and Kerryon Johnson, the first Lions running back with over 100 rushing yards since Reggie Bush on Thanksgiving 2013. And boy, the Patriots' defense is bad, and it's even worse when you consider that they allowed that to happen, a 26-10 result. There's a lot you could talk about with this, but we can talk more about it on our next podcast. But just what were your thoughts from this game?
Even when the Patriots lose, they screw me over. It's so annoying. I picked them in my survival football league, and I thought I was so smart because I was like, I didn't pick the Jaguars, I didn't pick the Vikings. I was like, and they immediately got eliminated earlier in the day, and I was like, the Patriots got it, and they immediately Tom Brady had the least passing yards in a half since I think it was like 2012, something like that. Like it was just awful display from the offense. Like the team, they're in trouble. I mean, we say this every September, but like when the offense isn't clicking, then you should start thinking you're in trouble because the Patriots have always been on their offense. The defense sucks. The defense sucked last year for the Patriots. They still made it to the Super Bowl because of their offense. But if their offense isn't clicking, and now they lost Rex Burkhead for at least 8 weeks, he's on IR now. I don't think he's going to be designated to return either. They're just like, they're in a lot of trouble. I mean, they get Julian Edelman back after this week, but this might be, I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs. I know we probably say this every year, but this may be the end of the Patriots that we've come to know. This might be the end of Tom Brady being Tom Brady in the sense that he plays like a god.
It could be the beginning of the end, I think would that be an accurate statement?
That would be an accurate statement.
Time will tell, but the big thing is they lost in a pretty ugly game in week 2 to the Jaguars. Typically, last week's game against the Lions is where they bounce back. The fact that they didn't is kind of, I think, what's got everyone up in arms. And they are home next week, but they're actually playing against the 3-0 Dolphins. And Austin, believe it or not, I actually think playing at home works against them because you know what happened? What if the Dolphins get out to a 10-0 or a 17-0 lead in that game in the first half? The crowd, they won't turn on them, but you'll know there will be panic in that building, and it could just unravel before your eyes.
I think that's a franchise that's not used to losing. I think the Boo Birds are going to come out. I think that they're going to feel the panic because the Patriots are obviously not a team that's been used to losing in quite a while. So, like, I think that would be enough to jar them. I think you're right. I think having home field might screw them if they go down early to the Dolphins.
So we will see about that. But in any case, our record this week, mine was 10-6. Austin was 7-9. That brings my total this season to 26-22. Austin, you had a couple of slow weeks to start the season. Not too bad this past week, but 14-34 on the year. Not looking too hot. What do you have to say for yourself?
I have to say that I've made some very poor decisions, like picking the Bills to win outright the first 2 weeks of the season. But it's all right. I'm bouncing back slowly but surely. Next week, I'll be positive. Next week, I'll have more right picks than wrong picks.
All right. And it starts on Thursday night with the Minnesota Vikings at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams may be kind of surprising getting 6.5 points. Vegas not liking the Vikings on the road. Who do you got in this one?
I would have picked the Vikings to win outright, and it's solely based on the fact that I don't think that either of the Rams starting corners are playing. I know Marcus Peters has a questionable designation. Obviously, I think Aqib Talib was placed on IR today, if I'm not mistaken. He's definitely not playing, that's for sure. And I think that they're a big part of them. I know that the Vikings are going to be without Everson Griffin because he has a whole crazy thing going on with him. And also Dalvin Cook, I believe, is questionable as well. But Rams without both their starting corners against Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, like, I feel like this is asking for an upset. I feel like, especially with a spread that high, I'm going to pick the Vikings to win outright. Who do you got?
I'm actually going to take the Rams just because of the fact that it's a third. I'll always take the home team on Thursday night, almost no matter what the spread is. I know the Vikings will come out and they'll probably play better than they did last week, but they're not getting much rest to rebound on. And the Rams are just so talented, even without their top cornerbacks. It'll be close, but I think they'll come through and they'll cover in this one. Last bit of discussion to get to before we wrap this one up. It's just the whole nature of the roughing the passer penalty. Let's talk a little bit about it because it's been such a highly contested thing around the league between players, media, coaches, fans, league officials, and it seems as though defensive players can't do anything to safely tackle a quarterback now. What's your take on all this?
My take is that this is the fans' fault. This is really the fans' fault for driving the NFL to get like this because NFL does all its moves based on business. What is going to be best for the business? What do people want to watch? And we're in a time where defense, people don't like defense as much. People like to see quarterbacks. And I saw statistics the other day that I literally agreed with that said viewership goes down once a starting quarterback gets injured. Like, because of course, like on a good team, when the Packers lost Aaron Rodgers last year, they were probably like, what do I have to watch for? The rest of the Packers are basically not that good. They're not like Aaron Rodgers. They don't have what he brings to the table. He's basically carrying that team. Why would you want to watch them anymore? I mean, unless you're an avid fan. I mean, if Ben Roethlisberger went down next Sunday, God forbid, knock on wood, I would still watch the Steelers games every game because I don't care because I'm still a fan of the Steelers. I'm going to root for them. But what about the casual fan? What about the fan that just watches whenever it's convenient because it's just fun? And you wouldn't want to watch if like you have some bad guy in there, some backup in there that's just there because your starting quarterback got hurt. It's not fun for a casual fan to be losing. It's why casual fans switch fan base all the time and why they're bandwagons all the time. But getting back to that, I've had a conversation with a bunch of my friends, and it's just evident that they don't like defense as much. Like a lot of people, I like defense. I say all the time the reason why I don't like college football is because a lot of the time I see games that end like 60-50, and that's normal. And just, I know everyone's going to correct me and say, no, that's only in one of the divisions.
The Big 12.
I don't actually even know what they're called in college football. I know it's like whatever the Pac-12 and SEC, whatever those are actually called as a whole. It's why college football is so popular and why NFL football is on the decline is because people want to see offense. People don't want to see defense. People don't care. And it's kind of sad. It's making the NFL worse because, all right, now we have to protect these money makers so that people actually keep viewing our stuff. And I mentioned it earlier, this is bringing flopping in, and it's going to really kill football for me. If flopping becomes a thing, like people say, yeah, I might have sold it a little bit, it's going to kill football for me because I'm not going into soccer and basketball, but for that exact reason. For the flopping just like immediately makes it want to just not watch it. Both games, like I see something stupid and I'm like, wow, this is trash. This is what these players do to feel like they're doing good for their team. Like they have to pretend to be hurt or something. Like I don't want to watch that. So when it comes to football, it's just such a terrible thing. I think it's terrible that they ruined like how defensive players play because it's become a meme on Twitter. Like they're just, what do you have to do to sack a quarterback? And it's like a massive, widespread thing that people say, okay, you got to pick them up, lay them down, put the pillow down, tuck them in with the blanket, and then kiss them on the forehead good night, so that's a good sack. That's how you treat the quarterback when you sack them. It's just, it's terrible. It's ruined right now. It's in a bad state because you can't do anything to a quarterback. They need to dial it back. Like, it is really bad because I would love to see the statistics on it, but I want to see what the statistics are like for viewership this year. Now that we've been 3 weeks in and we see all these stupid plays like in these games, especially against the Packers. Clay Matthews has gone in 3 straight weeks. It's really unfortunate for him. He's become a big face of debating against it because he thinks it's stupid, and rightfully so. But I went on a really long rant about that. What do you have to say about it?
I don't have a ton to say right now. I'll add more in our next podcast. But what I'm going to say basically is that I more casual fans are more interested in fantasy football and higher scoring stuff and higher points because it's exciting to them. It's not exciting to me when there's only offense. And to quote unquote correct you or just further explain what you were talking about with college football, they're called conferences with which the different teams play. And a lot of conferences have different types of playing styles. The SEC is basically about as traditional as it gets. It's like pro-style smash-mouth football across the board. You've got some conferences like the ACC, the Big Ten, which are kind of spread, or Pac-12, the Pac-12 and Big Ten, which are kind of spread. You get a good mix in the ACC. And the Big 12 is the one where they basically, that's why there was talk about Mason Rudolph not going in the first round, because guys like him, Patrick Mahomes, they went to the Big 12 where they basically spread it out and just had very simple offenses where they didn't really call plays. It's like no huddle. You look at the cardboard sign and you run a simple play and you just throw the ball all over the yard. And it's just, I don't find that to be very fun. Like, I'll catch a game every now and then, it's okay. But there was a game between who was it? I think it was Baylor and West Virginia. And that was when Geno Smith was at West Virginia. And the final score was 70-63. And it was just like, what are we doing here? Can anyone play defense? And the one play that I enjoyed most of last year's Super Bowl, it didn't have anything to do with any of the offenses. No, it was a defensive play by, what was his name? Who forced the fumble on Tom Brady late in that game? I know Derek Barnett recovered the fumble.
Oh, what's it, Jordan Hicks?
Maybe. I don't remember. In any case,
I can't remember.
In any case, I felt like that defensive play was the biggest play of the game, the most enjoyable. I enjoy a well-rounded 21-17 game, or maybe even a 13-10 game, more than I enjoy a 51-48 game. Like, I'll enjoy it, but like when you've got games that are constantly about just offense, it's not exciting to me. It turns me off. And I don't enjoy that. And Steelers fans shouldn't enjoy that either if you're traditional Steelers fans, because the Steelers have been all about defense throughout most of their history, at least the past 40 years. I don't like the way football is heading. The competition committee is going to be meeting soon, like they did for lowering the helmet rule. They say they're not going to change anything, but they also said that before too. So I think it could just be a different interpretation and we'll see it get called less often. That's what I'm hoping is going to happen. I guess so. Is there anything else you wanted to say on the matter right now?
No, I just hope that they do that. I hope they change the interpretation for it so that it gets called less often. I hope that that's what happened.
You can't take physical violence completely out of the sport. That's what the sport is, and if you don't want to get hurt, don't play at all. I mean, I guess you could say that about anything, but you have to know that with sports, there's a chance you can get hurt with any sport. So you can't get rid of it completely. It's going to happen. You saw in the last game it happened. So, all right, that'll wrap it up for me and Austin. So if you have any questions about the show, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website listed in the description below. Don't forget to check out the TSE Shop as well for any Steelers memorabilia and autographed memorabilia that you want to check out. We encourage you to check that out as well. And so thank you so much for joining us tonight. And the Steelers won 1-1 after 3 weeks. Not where we thought they'd be, but there are certainly worse ways to start a season. So with that in mind, thank you, as always, for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Have a good day.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below. Below.